Our next speaker this morning at the E6 Heaven Men's Conference, Jason Evert.
Thank you, Father. Let's begin our time together in prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Saint Joseph, pray for us. Saint John Paul II, pray for us. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, it's a blessing to be with you today. Not only the young guys, but husbands, fathers, those joining us online. I'd heard of a husband a while ago. I guess he and his wife were having, I don't know, whatever problems, and they go to counseling. So I guess the wife starts off, and she says, my husband here, he's not as affectionate as he used to be. He's not as thoughtful. He's not as romantic. And the husband just kind of rolled his eyes. Now, counselor got a feel for what was going on there. So he got up from behind his desk and he walked to where the wife was, and he took the wife in his arms and he gave her a long, passionate kiss. And then he sat her down and went back to his desk. And he said to the husband, now this is what your wife needs about 3 times a week. And the husband said, okay, I can bring her here on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So, a little misunderstanding here when it comes to intimacy. And I think our culture right now is greatly confused when it comes to human intimacy, human love, human sexuality, masculinity, femininity. Speaking to you on this topic, I know I speak on behalf of the other presenters. We don't get up here because we've got all this stuff figured out, right? Many of you have been married 3 times as long as I have, been raising kids and adoring our Lord long more than I have. It kind of reminds me of a couple of years ago. I was invited to speak in Honduras. I was down there speaking at churches and schools to the kids on chastity. We're driving through the jungle, and our host said, oh, look, down that road is a cloistered convent of religious sisters. And I said, oh, well, can we go there and ask them to pray for the talks, that they'd be fruitful and everything? And he said, oh, good idea. So we drive down this little road and get to this cloistered convent. We walk in just as the nuns are coming out of their private mass, and they come to the parlor to greet us there. And we told them, hey, I had a translator, and they said, yeah, Jason's here in the country giving chastity talks, and would you pray for that? And I'm like, oh, yes. And then one of the little elderly nuns steps up. She must be 85 years old. And she says, oh, you're giving chastity talks. I said, yes. And she said, oh, give us a chastity talk. And I'm like, ha. And then they sat down. And I said to the translator, I'm like, no, she's kidding, right? And like, no, they want a chastity talk. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, this is like Donald Trump giving like Pope Francis a poverty talk. Like, this is going in the wrong direction here. But they sat down and made me give a chastity talk. So I don't know if you've ever been compared to Honduras nuns, but to me, in a sense that, you've been in the pews, many of you, longer than I have. So I don't set myself example as the one who's figured all this stuff out. I'm not the goal. I've got the goals in my life. I think one of my biggest was my grandpa. He's been married 67 years. They had 10 kids, and their names were Joseph and Mary, okay? So it doesn't get better than that. And so, we've got the examples, the saints who I want to look at today, because our culture's got it upside down, right? To be a man, what are they, like, you gotta be rich. Well, guys have done that, right? They've been there. Well, there's 10 million millionaires in America. Okay, they've done that. A lot of masculinity is in sports. Well, we got 3,000 to 4,000 professional athletes. They've done it. Okay, but you've probably heard the question, how many American-born men have become canonized saints? Grand total of 0. Not a single man ever born in America has become a saint, yet. And so the priorities are out of whack. Our culture, you know it. I mean, it's in a state of crisis. I mean, not as if coronavirus has been bad enough in 2020. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday. Now, I'm not making this up, okay? These are headlines from USA Today, okay? Hasbro, the toy company, announces that Mr. Potato Head will now become gender neutral, okay? Not making this up. They said Hasbro is making sure that all feel welcome in the Potato Head world by officially dropping the Mr. from the Mr. Potato Head brand name logo to promote gender equality and inclusion. All right. It says the company is also launching a create your own Potato Head family kit where both parents can have a mustache. And this is what they're giving to kids. And it's like, what is going on right now? I mean, as if it's not bad enough, I was at a World Youth Day pilgrimage, and a high school girl pulls out her phone. She says, look, Jason, I'm going to Stanford University in the fall. She says, look, to get into college, I have to pick my gender. and she started scrolling through the list of genders, and there were 18 to pick from, but male and female were not options on the list. Facebook offers its users over 58 genders to pick from. It's like, dude, what is going on? Like, I had enough of an identity crisis growing up when there were 2 to pick from. And now, expecting these kids to navigate through 58, I mean, the breakdown in the family is going on. I met a high school boy. He said, Jason, he said, I know what you mean about divorce. He said, Jason, my dad's on his 9th marriage. And you see it just crumbling around us. I was at one high school, they had 87 girls pregnant on campus. Didn't include the junior high, brought the number of pregnancies over 100. There was even a 5th grade girl pregnant there. One of the girls we met was 7 months pregnant, and she just told her parents the news that she's expecting. They didn't know she was 7 months pregnant. She's been avoiding them a lot. Now that they know she's pregnant, she said, I don't know how to tell them the full story, okay? The full story is that her boyfriend lives in her closet. Her boyfriend's been living in her closet for more than a year. She brings him up leftovers after dinner. He hops out the window to hang out with friends at night. This has been going on for a year, and the parents have no idea. And so the moral of the story is when you dads get home today, check the closets. You know, I'm sure things are going better at your place, but just chaos. It's this unprecedented breakdown in the family. And I think the temptation in the midst of this cultural crisis is to look at the problem as something out there, to want to become like these culture warriors that fix all of these external problems outside of us. The problem is out there, when in reality, I remember a priest telling me once, he said that the problem that Islam made, among others, is thinking that the jihad, the holy war, is primarily exterior. They retreated from the interior holy war against their own vices, and they externalized the holy war to make it always outside of them. But for the Christian life, the jihad is within this holy war. I mean, listen to what St. John Paul II said in this regard. He says, we are often tempted not to enter the depth of our own conscience. Let us reject this immediately and proceed into the depth. And so we need to take a deep look. Okay, well, what's going on in my life that maybe God wants to root out? And we need specifics here because, men do not operate well with abstract principles, right? Like when your wife talks to you in a general way, like when my wife talks, I have no idea what she's talking about if she's not specific. She'll say things like, Jason, I could use a little more help around the house. Like, I don't mean, it's like, house big, what? And she's like, dude, take out the trash. I'm like, okay, now we're having a conversation. And so getting specific. I often think of St. Ignatius of Loyola. Many of you are familiar with his spiritual exercises. He said that the soul, in a sense, is like a castle or a fortress, and the devil, in the way he operates, is like a military commander or a strategist who will walk the perimeter of the fortress to see where the defenses are weakest. And where the wall is breached or the defenses are weak, it is at that point that he'll seek to entry to take possession of the fortress. And so we have to examine the conscience of, okay, where am I weak? Is it alcohol? Is it anger? Am I inattentive? Am I self-absorbed? Am I obsessed with work? Am I obsessed with activity or ministry? What is it? Is it lust? Is it unchastity? Where is it? And for a lot of guys, it's there in the area of lust. I remember a priest once said that Satan dares only approach the couple once he has isolated the man from the woman. Because when they are united, their unity is so profoundly rooted in the image of God that the devil cannot bear it. He isolates them from one another so that he may act. And so if there's any way, I think, in which the devil is isolating man from the woman nowadays, it's through that vice of lust and pornography. And I think I know well, because, I grew up with this stuff. Your buddies had it, your friends had it. First porn I ever saw, I was like in 2nd grade, riding bikes around the neighborhood. I found some dirty magazine in the street. I'm like, what's that? I'm like, oh, nice to meet you. Like, what do we do with it? My friend said, let's keep it. I'm like, well, yeah, where do we put it? He said, let's put it at your house. I said, that's a good idea. So get back to my house. I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to put it inside. I'm not getting busted. Like, I'd never seen porn before, but I knew something was wrong. So I said, I know what to do. So we ripped out all our favorite pictures, crumpled them up little balls, and then we shoved them into bushes in front of the house. So we'd come outside and look at them when we wanted. Now, the problem is my dad trimmed the hedges Saturday afternoon, found porn growing on the plants out front. So I got busted by the porn plant, but like we got back into it. In my high school, one boy in my high school actually passed out porn from his locker to anyone who would vote for him as senior class vice president. I mean, he's in the hallway, vote for Travis, vote for, I mean, I don't know where he is today. He's probably in Congress by now, but you know, we would just, we just laugh it off. Oh, I'm not getting you pregnant. It's not a big deal. But what was going on in the process is we were being emasculated. It was St. Thomas Aquinas who gave as his definition of effeminacy. Now, this is not his definition of femininity. This is not his definition of homosexuality. This is his definition of effeminacy. He said it is when a man refuses to let go of what is pleasurable in order to do what is arduous or difficult. That is what makes a man effeminate. And so there's really nothing effeminizing the globe as much as pornography right now. Of it emasculates us, because we think of masculinity, it's the crucifix. The lover who empties himself for the beloved. Whereas porn flips it backwards, so guys learn to empty women for the sake of ourselves. We missed the point why God made us men. And we didn't really even know what we were looking at in the porn. That I'm not looking at some naked body. I'm looking at somebody's daughter who's probably sexually abused as a little girl, but we would just laugh it off, call ourselves gentlemen for enjoying this stuff. And not realizing that, like, in one afternoon of looking at porn today, I mean, a guy can see more perfect women's bodies than any man in history could have ever seen in hundreds of lifetimes. And you get it in one afternoon, well, it's back the next day, back the next week. You do this for years, and then you just kind of jump into marriage thinking you're going to be captivated by one until death do you part. It doesn't happen. My buddy in college, and all his porn, you figure, I'll throw it away before I get married. I went to his wedding, beautiful wedding, divorced in 3 months. All he did was take all the lust he had for porn, look at his bride that way, and the marriage is over as soon as it started. One high school girl told me, she said, Jason, she said, I found out my dad looks at porn. She said, I used to look up to him. Now I can't even look at him. I thought he was a better man than that. One girl told me, she said, Jason, I've been looking at porn every day for 5 years. Because she said, 5 years ago, I found my father's pornography. And he doesn't know that I know that he looks. And he doesn't know that I look. But every day since I found his addiction, it has become my own. And this is like a 17-year-old girl. And so we have to step back, like, what am I training myself for when it comes to authentic love? It's like when I was in college, I played 3 years of college baseball. And one day I'm out in the outfield in the game, and the coach yells at me. He's like, Evert, come in. I run to the dugout. I'm like, what's going on? Like, you pull me out of the game? He said, no, I want you to pitch. I'm like, I don't pitch. He said, no, I saw in batting practice, got an arm. I just need you a couple innings. I'm like, coach, like, I didn't pitch high school ball. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. He said, you're going to be great. I said, I'm going to look like an idiot. And I get up there, and I'm like totally nervous. I'm like, I don't know what to do. And, you know, the crowd's there. You know, the batter digs in. The catcher squats down. And the catcher starts giving me all these signs. You watch baseball, throw a fastball. If you agree that's the right pitch, kind of nod your head and you throw it. You disagree, shake your head. He'll suggest a different one. You want to throw a curveball, knuckleball, forkball, what do you want? Now, my problem, I don't really have a good fastball. I don't have a reliable curveball. I don't have a knuckleball. Like, I have a baseball. That's what I have. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? I said, you know what? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to play mental games with the batter. So the batter digs in, the catcher squats down. He's like, 1. I'm like, no. He's like, 2. I'm like, not number 2. 3, no. 4, no. 5. Then he starts laughing at me. He's like running out of fingers at this point. He gets like number 7. I'm like, oh yeah, number 7, or whatever that is. And the batter's like, how many pitches does this guy have? I threw the first pitch. I hit the guy on the first pitch. It's his problem. But the moral of the story being is that, like, if you train yourself for years, lust, and the day comes to love the woman, it's like, you can't really fake it because all you know is how to take your own pleasure. This is why St. John Paul II, he said that when a man grows in purity of heart, he is able to give his wife the gift of the peace of the interior gaze. Meaning, when Adam first looked upon Eve's naked body, her heart was at peace because she knew he looked at her as God saw her. But with the advent of original sin, lust crept in, and now he began looking at her as a thing to be used for his gratification. And in the presence of such a look, a woman recoils. That's why a man will often wait until a woman looks away before he looks at her a certain way. It's because he knows that the glance itself, she can perceive it. And it fills her with a sense of resentment, vulnerability, and it's a barrier. But John Paul II says purity is not the absence of desire. It's the presence of that heart that is able to give woman the peace of the interior gaze when it's absent from the man's life. Spiritually, what it does to him. St. Alphonsus Liguori put it this way. He said, when a raven finds a dead body, its first act is to pluck out the eyes. And the first injury that impurity inflicts on the soul is to take away the light of the things of God. And so, to be utterly blunt, effectively what porn is for a man, a husband, a father, it's a spiritual vasectomy. His capacity to transmit the supernatural life to his family is severed from him. And so what is the solution? What is the reversal? How do we go back? What do we do with all these temptations that bombard us? I think we need a game plan, right? And some people say, well, just don't think about it. That doesn't work. I remember meeting a high school boy. He said, yeah, if I ever have a tempting thought, he said, I try to think of Ross Perot, that politician from like the 1980s, the elderly millionaire with the big ears. I'm like, hey, if that works for you, I guess you can stick with that. But to me, the don't think about it thing doesn't really work. You know, other people say, well, if you see an immodest woman, just bounce your eyes. And if you see another one, just bounce your eyes. Well, I'm like, dude, today's culture, like you're gonna get whiplash. Like they're everywhere. And it's like, there's gotta be a deeper answer. And some people think the solution is just, we'll try to kill those desires. Purity is not about killing your sexual desires. Because if I think that sexual desire is lust, then I'll just give up after a couple of weeks. Because it's like, wow, my desires aren't going away. I must be totally displeasing to God. In fact, a group of college guys came to me once, and they said, Jason, we're having a real big problem. They said, look, we're part of this evangelization thing where we travel around the country in a van giving retreats for like high school kids, youth groups. And he said, so it's 4 guys and 4 girls, and we're driving around the country. And he said, the problem we're having, he said, like the 4 girls in our group, he's like, dude, they are gorgeous. They are intelligent, they're virtuous, they're holy, they're funny, and all of us are sexually attracted to them. What do we do? And I said, okay, let me get this straight. You are spending the majority of a year in a small enclosed vehicle with 4 gorgeous college women, and you're finding yourselves sexually attracted to them. They're like, yeah. I said, you should go to counseling for that. You know, and they picked up on my sarcasm. Okay, desire is not the problem. The question is, what do we do with these desires? Like I heard a priest say once, he said, there's a difference between having a bird fly over your head and letting it make a nest in your hair. And so the solution is not to kill the sexual desire, but to perfect the sexual desire. What does that look like? I think the Catholic Church, many not know this, actually has a saint who spent all his money on prostitutes. The guy's name was Saint Vitalis of Gaza. He lived in Africa. He'd work all day under the hot sun, take the money he'd earn, and every night bring it to a different prostitute. So she'd spend the whole night with him and no other man. But instead of using the girls, he brought them the gospel, prayed with them, prayed for them, told them they could start over, converted a great number of prostitutes who became holy wives and mothers. One morning, he's walking out of the brothel, and a man saw him, recognized him as a Christian, was so sick of Christian hypocrites, struck the guy in the head with something, and killed him. And the prostitutes came out and said, well, you don't understand who he was, but it was too late and he was dead. Historians say that when he was being buried, all these former prostitutes came, processing with candles and lanterns to his gravesite to honor the man who saw their dignity when they had totally forgotten it. Now, I'm not recommending you try that as a method of evangelization. Don't talk to the men's group, hey, we should raise money, get a prostitute, service hours. Okay, this is a bad idea. But the point is, the redemption of the heart's possible, but how do we do it? Like, give specifics. Well, I think a couple things. One, we got to look at the triggers. Okay, when am I messing up? Is it when I'm bored, lonely, angry, stressed, or tired? You can think of that acronym, BLAST, B-L-A-S-T. Am I bored, lonely, angry, stressed, or tired? At those moments of desolation, the human person seeks consolation. But what am I grabbing onto for consolation? Because when you're in a state of desolation, temptation appears a lot stronger than it really is. It's kind of like a Friday in Lent. by like 5, 6 at night, you just drive by a Taco Bell and you're like, that smells delicious. Like, wow, meat. It's like, no, dude, it's like cat food in there. Like, that cat meat, like that's not that great, but because you haven't had meat since Thursday night, it just seems so much more appealing. But what pornography actually does is it, in a sense, inhibits our masculinity in this way. When a man is brought into the world, we're brought into the world what? Through the body of a woman. The first thing you learn, even before you're born, is the body of the woman is consolation. And then as soon as you're born into the world, immediately the baby cries, is brought to the breast of the mother. The body of the woman is your consolation. We're ingrained in this. But as a boy is weaned from his mother properly, he ends up becoming a source of strength for the woman, a consolation to her, rather than her being the refuge for him. But what porn does is it retards this entire process of masculine development, that when a grown man gets to those points of stress or desolation, he's going back to the body of the woman for consolation instead of being a source of strength for the woman. And so we've got to look at what's going on in my triggers when I'm bored, lonely, angry, stressed, tired. Am I going to the deeper issue, which is what we need to look at, is the roots. Where's all this stuff coming from? Why am I tempted so much to look at porn? Is it just to see the woman? Or do I want to be seen by the woman? Do I want to be desired because I just feel like a failure? I feel unattractive. I feel unwanted. I feel rejected even by my spouse, and I want to be wanted. Like, what are the deeper roots? In fact, I read an evangelical author recently. We quoted him in a book Matt Fradd and I just did, and I love what he said. He said, healing from these sexual sins requires you to pivot from condemning your lack of willpower to addressing the role that trauma may be playing in your unwanted sexual behavior. He said, a heart filled with an ounce of kindness for your life story will accomplish so much more for you than a mind filled to the brim with strategies to combat lust. In other words, our unwanted sexual desires and behaviors are so much easier to handle when we understand them. And the shame aspect to it just gets compounded when we don't understand where all this stuff is coming from. So we got to look at the roots, got to look at the trigger. It's not just a lust problem. That's like trying to clip the leaves off a weed, and then you're not dealing with the root system underneath. And so what are the roots? What are the triggers? And then also, do I even have accountability in my life? Because, when you were a single guy, you had brothers, friends, friendship, fellowship, that was in place. And then a girlfriend came into the picture. Like, okay, well, I can still do school and girlfriend and buddies. And then marriage comes in. It's like, okay, well, it's a little tougher, but I still got my buddies, I got my wife, I got my work. But then kids come, and then another kid, and it's like, well, work, ministry, kids, this, that. What ball gets dropped is the fellowship, because I can't drop my work, I can't drop my wife, I can't drop my kids, but I can't fit all this on my plate, so brotherhood can wait later. And then we start to get isolated, and it gets to be a bit of a Lone Ranger situation. But the benefits we get from being around authentic brothers. I heard one guy, Christian guy, is cheating on his wife, going to strip clubs, looking at porn, doing all that stuff. And he finally had the guts to confess to another guy at church that he had been doing all this stuff. And he knew this guy was a godly man, and he just pours it all out. And the guy just looked at him and said, hey, look, bud, Larry, he said, if what you really want to do is look at porn and masturbate, then go ahead and do it. And the guy was perplexed. He's like, look, I know this guy's a solid dude, but like, what? And he said, no. If what you really want to do is look at porn and masturbate, then go ahead and do it. And the guy was frustrated. He pounded the desk and he said, that's not what I really want to do. And his friend said, exactly. And it was a revelation. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not all bad. Maybe within me is this deep desire for authentic sacrificial love that's just gotten buried underneath all my baggage and lust, but God still sees goodness in me. This isn't what I really want. And so sometimes when we open it up to others, so much more light can come in. I remember in college, I'd done a bunch of dumb stuff, and I went to confession, and the priest was visiting from France. And I said, sweet, he's from France. I'll never see him again. This is perfect. And so bad attitude is where I was at. So I give him confession, spill it all. And he says to me, he says, Jason, for your penance, I want you to tell Jesus that he has a problem. I'm like, dude, what? He says, I want you to tell Jesus that he has a problem. I said, for my penance, you want me to tell Jesus that he has a problem? And he's like, oui, yes, And I'm like, I don't understand. He said, well, look, do you belong to Jesus? I said, yes, I belong to Jesus. And he says, well, Jesus has you. You are a big mess. You are a problem. If Jesus has you, Jesus has a problem. And I'm like, but what a good way to look at your sins, not to take yourself so seriously. It's like Francis de Sales. He said, have patience with the whole world, but first of all, with yourself. Do we have that accountability piece? And then in the end, I think we just need strategies too. What do I do in that moment of temptation? What if it comes and I'm driving to work and I see that woman jogging down the street and I want to look and drive off the side of the road? Or what about if I'm in church and I'm just trying to pray and then I'm just getting flashbacks of that woman 20 years ago from that pornographic pop-up 2 days ago? Like, what do I do with that thought in that moment? One of the things that I've found to be helpful is you can just pause and you can just maybe trace a little sign of the cross on your forehead. Nothing big, just inconspicuous like that. And then remember the 4 parts of the cross. The first part of the cross goes up. And so when you see a beautiful woman, instead of seeing her as an occasion of sin, as a temptress, you could see her and then thank God for her beauty. Gratitude, the prayer of gratitude. Thank you, God, for making her beautiful. God, you did a good job on that one. And so just thank you. So a proper response for the goodness of what you see. Because the human body, from the beginning, has been an invitation of love. And you remember, as Deacon was saying, like when Adam first saw Eve, like he was in awe, right? Alas, this one is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. It's kind of funny when Eve first sees Adam, she doesn't say anything. She's like, that's nice. I'm like, come on, really? That's it? But the human body is an invitation to love. And so if our answer to that, no, we know something's missing there, the answer's gotta be yes. And so we have to respond in love. How do you do that? 1, gratitude. So first thing is see a beautiful one. Okay, God, thank you for making her beautiful. But then you don't stop there. Then the cross comes down. This could be a prayer of contrition. God, I'm sorry for the times I've looked wrongly upon your daughters. Create in me a clean heart. And so we're going from gratitude to contrition, but you don't want to stay in there and well in shame. Then it comes up, and then it goes off to the side. So at this point, you could look at her hand. Does she have a wedding ring? If she does, pray for her and her husband. If she doesn't have a ring, you could pray for her vocation. So what you're doing here is you're transforming temptation into intercession. It's like that form of martial arts called Tai Chi, where you use your aggressor's opponent's energy against you and you turn it against them. And so you're transforming temptation into intercession, and you're responding to the beauty of the body with love. And so if you have some pornographic flashback, you can just pause. And instead of not thinking about it, you can actually really think about her. Where is she right now? Is she going through a divorce? Has she had an abortion? Is she being abused? Is she even still alive? Should I pray for her? So like, she's there in the world somewhere, or in the world to come. Like, maybe I should just pray for her right now. And so we're taking that into prayer. And then the last part of the cross goes away from her and over to here, which is back to God. Where did her beauty come from? Who invented her body? The Blessed Trinity. That's why no matter how beautiful a woman is, you notice every time you see a beautiful woman, it's almost like you've never seen one before in your life. Their beauty is so extraordinarily unique. I went to an all-boys high school, right? Right next to us was the all-girls high school. Once in a while, a girl would make the mistake of wandering upon our campus, okay? And as she would walk, I mean, time would stand still. It'd be like, whoa, man. And that's where we get woman from. Like, whoa, man. And I mean, the place would say, I mean, it wasn't that bad. It was actually much worse. But there was something going on that being captivated by her presence, but we didn't know how to rightly look upon her. But where did her beauty come from? Because when you see how beautiful she is, and then you move on, there's a restlessness, that there was something satisfied, but you're not satisfied, because it's only a finite participation in the infinite beauty of the Blessed Trinity. Hers is not the beauty we ultimately long for, it's the one who gave her that beauty. And so we can go through these prayers of gratitude, contrition, intercession, and adoration, leading our hearts and minds back to God. These are the 4 forms of prayer you're going to find in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And so we can take that moment where we're losing God and we can find him in it. And so if we ever lose sight, though, I think, of who God created us to be, one of the beauties of his creation is he has stamped into our bodies not only our identity as men, but our calling. Right now we're living in a culture that tells you the body is meaningless. Gender is a social construct. Masculinity, femininity, male, female, it's kind of up for grabs. In fact, this has been going on for decades. I mean, you remember decades ago, people were starting up with these ideas in the universities. Well, gender is a social construct, and boys and girls are really just the same. It's just that we give boys blue and guns and trucks, and we give girls pinks and babies and blankets, and that's why there's a gender gap. And in fact, one sociologist set out to disprove this. And she said, I have a little girl, so I'm going to raise her gender neutral. Instead of being pink or blue, she'll be yellow. Instead of having the guns and the trucks and the dolls, I will give her all the toys, and you'll see she's just going to be a gender-neutral child. Now, this didn't go so well. In fact, she gave up the research because she said it got so frustrating because every night her daughter insisted upon tucking each of her trucks into bed one at a time. Good night, little truckie. Good night, little truckie. Good night, little truckie. Like she couldn't scrub the maternal out of her. I think a better example is Hasbro. You know, the toy company that just made Mr. Potato Head gender neutral. Years ago, they tried to make a gender-neutral playhouse. Okay, now this is supposed to be like some dollhouse that boys and girls would play with in the same way. That didn't go well either. Here's what they found. It soon emerged that girls and boys did not interact with the structure in the same way. The girls dressed the dolls, kissed them, and played house. The boys catapulted the toy baby carriage from the roof. Yeah, a Hasbro manager came up with a novel explanation. Boys and girls are different. Well, you think so. And so in contrast to this cultural message that our bodies are meaningless, John Paul gives us the theology of the body, which tells us, no, your body is meaningful. It is loaded with meaning of what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. And some people just write off what could a bunch of celibate bishops and priests and popes really have to teach us about human sexuality? But if you think about it, this attitude is really pompous. I mean, what can a priest know about marriage and sexuality? I mean, you think about it. Okay, look, I'm a married man, so I only know one woman, right? And she'd probably even argue, I don't even know her that well. I mean, she even told me once, she's like, Jason, you're not a very good listener. I said to her, honey, I'm a motivational speaker, not a motivational listener. Now, she didn't think that was very funny, but I thought it was rather witty on my part. But I know one, and I know her quite imperfectly. A priest, though, is really not confined to one. Because, I mean, you think about the day of a life of a priest, man. Dude, 8 o'clock in the morning, they could be baptizing a baby. At noon, they could hear someone's confession who's been away from the faith for 30 years. 3 in the afternoon, celebrating a wedding. 5 in the afternoon, doing marital counseling. 2 o'clock in the morning, anointing of the sick by someone's deathbed. I mean, the prism through which they can view human life. Because you compound that upon 70 years of priesthood, upon 2,000 years of the saints. To throw away that collective wisdom because they're celibate would leave us impoverished. Unbelievable the depth of wisdom that they have to offer us. And John Paul, I think in a second, poured all that out to us in his theology of the body. Now, many of you are already familiar with this, but it's a series of Wednesday audiences he gave from 1979 to 1984. About halfway through this, he wanted to create 2 institutes in the church to bring this message to the modern world. One was the Pontifical Council for the Family, and the other one was the International Institute for Studies on Marriage and the Family. And he, during a Wednesday audience, was going to launch these 2 initiatives to proclaim the theology of the body to the ends of the earth. But the night before, he was in his chapel. His secretary, Monsignor Jevish, woke up in the middle of the night because he could hear some noise in the Vatican apartments. Jevish got up and he walks down the hallway to see if the Holy Father is okay. The Holy Father wasn't in his room, goes to the chapel, and there's the Holy Father before the Blessed Sacrament. Now, this was a common occurrence. The Holy Father would spend marathons of prayer, 6 to 8 hours at a time before the Blessed Sacrament, sometimes throughout the night. And so he was used to seeing this, but he noticed the Holy Father was kneeling before the tabernacle, but he was speaking out loud. And this is what the noise was, because he kept saying, he was groaning in prayer, and he kept saying the same Polish word over and over and over again. The Polish word was dlaczego. So you see the Holy Father kneeling before the tabernacle saying, dlaczego, dlaczego, dlaczego. And Monsignor Jevish, out of reverence, just left the Holy Father alone, and he went back to his quarters to go to sleep. But Jevish said in the morning, the Holy Father woke up, and normally he's very interactive, he's got a great sense of humor, is always asking people different questions, but he wouldn't speak to anybody. He wouldn't even eat breakfast. He had a little Italian tea, and he was completely recollected on something. And then he went out for that day's Wednesday audience, and it was the assassination attempt, and he was shot in St. Peter's Square that morning. This is what was going on the night before, and that Wednesday audience is when he was supposed to institute these things to proclaim the theology of the body to the ends of the earth. And he said later on, he understood that blood needed to be spilled for this message to be fruitful. As bishop, he wrote a poem in which he said, the word might not convert you, but the blood will. And so what is this message that suffering need to happen to bear fruit? Well, it's this theology of the body, that the human body reveals not only who we are as male or female and our personhood, but it reveals our mission as men and women. And so, okay, well, what is the mission of a man? Well, look at a man's body. What distinguishes us from the feminine? Well, a man's body reveals, like, you have the strength to initiate the gift of life-giving love. It is stamped into the man's body. You have the strength to initiate the gift of life-giving love. So let's break this down. Strength. What is the purpose of a man's strength? Because of original sin, instead of serving and sacrificing, we dominate, we manipulate. But the purpose of the body is to serve. I had once heard a man say, look, he was talking to boys and young men. He said, if a piano needs to be moved, don't be the guy who picks up the bench. In other words, you use your strength to serve. During this year of St. Joseph, we've got this amazing example of St. Joseph. Personally, I despise most artwork of St. Joseph, all of it that depicts him as an elderly man. There's a lot of bad Catholic art that shows Joseph in his 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's like, well, why? There's no historical evidence whatsoever that he was an elderly man. In fact, typical Jewish men at that time in history would marry at about the age of 18 years of age. As soon as they could care for family, they would get married. Why depict him as an elderly man? Some early Christians did this out of piety in order to guard the virginity of Mary. We have to depict Joseph as a very old man, and that will safeguard her purity. No. Totally off base. Her purity was not protected by his age. It was protected by his virtue and his love for her. His love for Mary was not a threat to her virginity. It was precisely the love of Joseph that was the very safeguard of Our Lady's virginity. If you really take this to prayer, God the Father in his eternal wisdom chose to place the Immaculate Heart of Mary and her perpetual virginity for its guardianship into the hands of a college-aged man, because there would be no man better fit on earth, precisely because of this fiery love Joseph would have had for Our Lady. Not only did he love her, he was in love with Mary. Why do I say that? How could he not be? She was Our Lady. He was completely in love with her. But as I said, his love was not a threat to her virginity. And he was not a weak, frail man. In fact, his role, as we read in the Greek, a carpenter. In English, it doesn't get it across. It's tekton in the Greek, which is essentially a lumberjack, a construction worker, a carpenter, and a masonry worker, all kind of wrapped into one. There's ancient rabbinical texts that talk about tektons cutting down the cedars, the Lebanon, the big trees, and then carrying massive beams of lumber through the streets of the Holy Land. And rabbinical texts will talk about what if a tekton carrying one of these beams hits a woman carrying a pitcher of water? What are the Mosaic laws to follow in that accident? And so you get this image of a burly man carrying beams of wood on his shoulder through the streets of the Holy Land, teaching his son who would follow in his footsteps, to carry beams of wood on his shoulder through the streets of the Holy Land. And Joseph, Jesus, God says, I need you to take Mary, go down to Bethlehem, then go down to Egypt, then go back to Nazareth. Okay, that trip is hundreds of miles. You would not ask an 80-year-old to take that trip. I mean, even if his walker had the tennis balls underneath it, it's not going to get there. You're going to entrust this to a man who's capable to do it. And this is why our church honors St. Joseph. He is the terror of demons. Why is he the terror of demons? Because he's the guardian of the Virgin. And it was his love that safeguarded her virginity. And so we look to guys like St. Joseph, a man who's authentically a servant. Because in our vocations, we're called obviously to the works of mercy, but most of you are married men. One of the beauties of married life is the works of mercy are demanded of you daily. I mean, think about raising kids. My wife and I have 8 kids. My life is feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, caring for the sick. Depending on how they're behaving, I might be visiting the imprisoned by the end of the day. We got it covered, right? In fact, I remember one day I'm somewhere and I hear one of my kids be like, Dad. I'm like, where are you, Dad? I'm like, where are you? He's like, I'm on the toilet. Okay, I'm like, walk in the bathroom. I'm like, what you doing? He's sitting there on the throne. I'm like, what do you need, bud? And he's sitting there on the toilet and he said, Dad, I need you to do 4 things for me. And I'm like, oh, okay, what is that? He said, I want you to turn on the light, turn on the fan, hand me a book about dinosaurs, close the door on your way out, and I will call you when I'm finished. And I'm like, yes, my lord, yes, my liege. It's just like servanthood is demanded within marriage. But not only is our strength to be used to serve, but to conquer. Not to conquer like the woman for the sake of myself, but to conquer myself for the sake of the woman. Because we're called to go out, to serve, to conquer the culture. But I think a lot of times what happens, like a friend of mine, he said, I remember the priest, and he said, hyperactivity in ministry, apostolic life, getting super active and wanting to do all these things, he said more often than not, it's a sign of spiritual laziness. And I was like, wait, what? He said just hyperactivity in your ministries is a form of spiritual laziness because you don't want to do the hard work, which is what happens on your knees in prayer. And you'd rather just be productive and do, when it's the fruitfulness that comes from a prayer life. A buddy of mine said, a priest told him, he said, look, in all your ministry and all your work, he said, do not become a street light only for your house to become dark. And I mean, that stuck with me of how easy it is to go out and do all these great things for the church, but then neglect the family. And so we're called to conquer ourselves. And then ultimately to sacrifice ourselves. Because like, we all kind of want to look like a knight, but we don't want to really bleed like one. But we have to learn this growing up. Like I remember one boy came up to me after a chastity talk and he said, Jason, I thought your talk was great. And he said, look, I'm sleeping with my girlfriend, but he said, I love her so much, I would die for her. I'm like, really? And he said, oh yeah. He said, look, if someone put a gun to her head, I would tell that person to shoot me instead. I'm like, no kidding, you take a bullet for your girlfriend. He said, absolutely. I said, okay, if you're willing to die for her, then do it. And he said, what do you mean? I said, look, nobody's gonna be shooting your girlfriend unless she's involved in organized crime or some Mexican drug cartel, in which case you need to make better dating decisions, but no one's shooting your girlfriend. You don't have to protect her from the mafia, man. You gotta protect her from yourself. You gotta protect her from lust. That's the death that needs to die. And if we learn to die that death, marriage will come more naturally. On our wedding day, there's a little boy sitting in the back of the church, never been to a wedding before. And he kept asking his dad the whole liturgy, what does this mean? What does that symbolize? Why are they doing this? And the dad would explain. And he hit his dad, he said, Dad, why is Jason's wife, Kristalina, why is she wearing that beautiful glowing white wedding dress? And he said, oh, Anthony, that is because today is the happiest and the most joyful day of her life. So she's wearing this radiant white. And the kid's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And he's like, Dad, how come Jason's wearing all black up there then? Well, that's a valid point. Same reason priests wear black clerics most of the time, because black symbolizes death. Marriage is an invitation, come and die. I sometimes think that Jesus is almost like on a crucifix, looking out at all the husbands, fathers, and men and saying, look, this is how I got my bride to heaven. How else do you think you're going to get yours there? And so we need to remain upon that cross. So we're supposed to use that gift of our strength to serve, to conquer, to sacrifice. Another part of the body, we're supposed to be the initiators of love. But because of our culture and porn, like we're either initiating lust or we're just initiating nothing. And we buy this false notion of freedom. Oh, you don't want to get a girlfriend? Then you're tied down. You don't want to get a wife. It's like a ball and chain. You don't want to have all those kids, man. It's like game over. And even in marriage, people are like, well, once you get married, wait a couple of years before you have kids. And some couples are like, yeah, we want to wait like 5 years so we can really get to know each other. I'm like, look, you want to get to know each other? Have kids. You'll get to know each other real good, okay? And so, but this false notion of freedom, all like commitment inhibits me. But I remember one of the best homilies I ever heard. I was at college. This priest gets up in front of like 1,000 college students. And he said, ladies, would you please raise your hand if a man on our campus asked you out on a date this week? Barely any girls put their hands up. And that priest spent the rest of the homily drilling into the guys for failing to initiate relationships. And you should have seen the girls. They were like, hallelujah, Father, preach on. And those girls were in love with Father Ron after that. But we love them more because he kind of just smoked us out of our little holes and told us, look, you have to initiate love. And you'll even see this in secular culture. There was a beer commercial that came out years ago. A great beer commercial. And I know some of you aren't old enough to drink, so I don't want to contribute to the delinquency of minors, but it was a really good beer commercial. And in it was those old Dos Equis commercials. You remember that old bearded Spaniard guy, and he'd always give these little proverbs, stay thirsty, my friends, that guy. And he's always sitting with like these beautiful women. And this one commercial, he's sitting there flanked by all these gorgeous 20-something-year-old girls who could be like young enough to be his granddaughter. It's kind of creepy if you ask me. But the guy's sitting there with all these women, and he looks at the camera, and all he says is, hey guys, it doesn't take two people to talk to one woman. That's the whole commercial. And I was like, oh, but I like it. He's saying risk. He's saying go out, initiate. I read one priest, he said, look, a man should be decisive. Don't be an indecisive wimp hoping for an apparition. Trust in God and pop the question. Because when a man is passive, he is simply out of his element. He's out of place. Sometimes you'll see artwork of women at leisure, right? You've seen the paintings of like a woman sitting there with a blanket and a bowl of fruit, and she's just sitting there. It's like, okay, great. That's great for you and the fruit. I'm happy for you. But like, you never see art of men like that. Like if a guy just sitting there in his boxers, like some avocados, like, hey, look at me. It's like, whoa, something's off there. I mean, you'll see calendars and posters of like women in bikinis draped over the hoods of Lamborghinis, but what if you ever saw a guy like in his underwear on the hood of a car? Like surely he's inebriated. You know, what would you say to the guy? You'd be like, dude, get off the car. You're gonna dent it. I mean, like put his shirt on, change the oil, get a job, like just go do something. Like you're simply out of place. And it's not that the girl's job is to be passive, but rather actively receptive. But as men, I feel for the guys today because men aren't taught how to do this stuff. Like right now, they really don't know how to date because all they're fed is these platitudes. Oh, be a gentleman. They don't know what that means. Like go ask some teenage boy, what does it mean to be a gentleman? He'd be like, oh, well, if there's a girl and there's a door, you open the door for the girl. Oh, good. What else? He'd be like, well, if there's another door, then that door also is open. Oh, stretch a little bit. We got to give these boys specifics. And so I tell them, look, you ask the girl out. And when you ask her out, use the word date. Because you don't say the word date, she doesn't know what you're talking about. Like, be clear and intentional. Plan the date with her. Don't sit around, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. We can play Minecraft. I don't know. Like plan the date. And then, like, let's say you go to a restaurant. Pick her seat for her. Not because I'm going to tell you where to sit, but if it's a beautiful view, you give her the beautiful view. If there's no view, you take the seat facing the wall. So she knows during dinner, your attention is on her, not on ESPN or the cute little hostess walking by, and it makes her feel honored. You tell as a teenage boy, he's like, oh, that's good. And I should add that as a husband, you do receive a dispensation to watch the football game at all times while dating. No, you can't do that. But really, the reason kids don't know how to date today is because the dads dropped the ball. We all did. I've got a buddy of mine, he's been married for 20 years, and he and his wife have never missed their weekly date night in 20 years. Every week he takes his wife on a date, rain or shine. It doesn't matter. If the kids are sick in the living room throwing up in buckets, they don't care. They'll just drug them out with some Benadryl and have a date in the kitchen at midnight. Like, whatever it's gonna take, they're gonna get their date. But I'm telling you, those kids are gonna know how to date. The rest of the culture, though, is like a culture of single people who pretend like they're dating. Then we have a culture of dating people who behave like they're married, and we're stuck with a culture of married people who seem to think they're single. Like everything is out of order, but it kind of begins with us. Am I pursuing my bride in marriage? In fact, it was that scripture verse, a man shall leave his father and mother, cleave to the wife. The word for cleave in Hebrew, apparently, does not mean cling, like a barnacle on the side of a ship. The word for cleave actually means hotly pursue, meaning you leave the mother or the father, you get married, then you hotly pursue the wife. And that's why kids today don't know how to date, is I think, and I don't say this because I perfected it, but we've fallen in this regard. Because look, dude, marriage is tough, right? G.K. Chesterton said marriage is a great adventure like going to war. Like, okay, well, somebody's been married. You know, it's tough. But this is why John Paul II said to us, love is a constant challenge thrown to us by God. And you know what it's like, husbands, like, it gets tough sometimes. I remember one point my wife and I having some argument about something, and like we could not see eye to eye on this thing. And no matter what it took, like we just could not agree on it. And I went up in our room and I just knelt down and I was praying to God. I'm like, God, like, dude, who's right here? God, can you just show me if she's right or I'm right? Because I'm pretty sure that I'm right. But like, God, like if she's right, if there's any possibility, like open my mind to that, like who's right, her or me? Like what is it? And it's like, I don't hear God speak, like no visionary here. But it's like, I heard God say like, it doesn't matter who's right, just love her. Which was a really dissatisfying answer because I was actually curious if I was right or not. But it was like, okay, God, I will love her. But was I right? He's like, get out of here, kid. But sometimes love's the only answer. And so are we initiating this stuff, initiating the love? And then ultimately a love that is life-giving. Unfortunately, because we're literally marinated in a contraceptive culture, men live in fear of their own fatherhood from adolescence. You know, I asked a bunch of high school boys, hey guys, what is the most common sexually transmitted disease? One guy said, ooh, I know, pregnancy. I'm like, no. I'm like, dude, kids are not bacteria. I mean, fatherhood is a joy. And honestly, I think the best part of fatherhood is when, like, you're home with the kids and your wife leaves and she goes out to run errands. Because if your wife is gone, there's really no adult supervision, right? And so I remember, you know, one day she leaves, and when she takes off, and I'm like, hey kids, mom's gone, let's go upstairs, WrestleMania. And they're like, yeah. So we run upstairs, got this big king-size bed. I'm like, ding, 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 let's go at it. It's like mixed martial arts or ultimate fighting, but you're allowed to do like wedgies and wet willies and stuff. You know, and I'm just throwing them, and there's diapers getting chucked around, and drums slamming them, because I'm undefeated. And it's like, you just go at it until someone gets a fat lip or a concussion on the end table, then you just go out downstairs and eat cookie dough. Like, this is fatherhood. But kids don't see that stuff. Kids live in a culture where it's like, if you have more than 2 kids, you're out of control. I mean, once my wife and I had our 3rd kid, which is our first girl, people started saying to us, like, you're done, right? You got your boys, you got your girl, you're done, right? I'm like, yes, I've collected all of the genders. I can stop procreating now. It's like, what are you talking about? Where are they getting this from? Look at our culture. MSN had an article called Top 10 Reasons You Should Never Have Kids, okay? This is serious. If you have children, it says, a large part of your life will be focused on your relationship with your child rather than yourself. Heaven forbid, I wouldn't want to ruin my relationship with myself. And it says, look, if you don't have kids, you won't be exposed to germs your kids bring home from daycare. Primarily, you get aches, pains, flu-like symptoms, and diarrhea. Okay, it's true. Like, my kids bring home like Ebola in their lunchbox. And it says, like, if you don't have kids, you can be alone anytime you want. If you don't have time for yourself, you'll lose yourself. But not having kids means you won't lose yourself. You can play tennis, do yoga, or whatever you want all the time. And it's like, this is heartbreaking. This is the inversion of the church's teachings on human freedom, that you only find yourself in the fullest giving of yourself, to married life, to the seminary. In fact, when John Paul II was talking to college guys as a bishop, he was leading a retreat for college guys, and this is what he said. He gives this quote to the boys, and I loved it. He says, God, who is Father, who is Creator, has planted a reflection of His creative strength and power within man. And we men should sing hymns of praise to God the Father for this reflection of Himself, not only in our souls, but also in our bodies. Our bodies reveal God the Father, an initiator, not just of creative physical life, but of spiritual life. So as an initiator of spiritual life in the family, we're called to be Christ, priest, prophet, king. What does a priest do? Sacrifices himself, but he blesses. I was at a men's conference a year ago. I asked more than 1,000 men, how many of you were physically blessed by your father? Probably 2. 2 out of probably 1,000 men were ever blessed by their own fathers. But if you read the Old Testament, this was just a part of fatherhood. You know, whether Isaac and Jacob, like, it was just a part of, and there was something ontological going on at that moment when the father is conferring the blessing. So, well, how do I do that? Trace the sign of the cross, or just remember the number 6. You can remember the number 6, then go to Numbers chapter 6. And right in there is that beautiful blessing where it says, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you His peace. What if we just memorize that from number 6, trace the sign of the cross, and put our kids to bed every night with that? Ontologically, something would be going on to spiritually protect our children with the fatherly blessing. And so a priest blesses the kids. Also, we got to be the prophet. Now, obviously, when you hear the word prophet, you kind of like, I don't know about that, because prophets were pretty weird people for the most part in the Bible. I remember Bishop talked about it. He says, yeah, look at Isaiah. Isaiah the prophet preached for 3 years completely naked. I mean, like today, like you wouldn't even pass your safe environment class at your parish if you're trying to pull that stuff. 3 years, preached totally naked. Ezekiel, that guy was weird. This guy once stayed in bed for 430 days straight. He would go in and out of trances, and he would eat books. So he was like a college student in many respects, you could say. And then you got like guys like Jeremiah, who God said, hey, Jeremiah, go get a new pair of underwear and wear it till it's totally rotten. And Jeremiah's like, okay, you say so, puts them on. And then after they're totally rotted, God says, okay, take your underwear, go to the Euphrates River, bury them under a rock. And I'm sure Jeremiah was glad to be done with the undies, and he gets there. Could you imagine him being there and be like, Jeremiah, what are you doing? So, just put my underwear under a rock here. Buries it, and he's thinking, okay, done with those things. And then like all this time passes, and these things have been like fermenting near the musty riverbanks under this rock. And then God says, Jeremiah, go dig up the underwear again. And I'm like, oh, great. So he goes back, he digs up the underwear, and he's holding this nasty pair of tattered undies. And God's like, Jeremiah, tell me, what is that underwear good for now? And Jeremiah's like, it's not good for anything. It's just nasty. And God's like, that is like you, house of Israel. You used to be close to me, like brand new loincloths. Then you separated me from me. Now you're rotten and you're good for nothing. Go tell the house of Israel that. I'm sure Jeremiah's like, couldn't you just have told me the analogy? Like, did we have to go through all that stuff? And so you look at the prophets like, dude, weird dudes. You might not relate to them. But a prophet's one who just speaks the truth. You don't have to prophesy the future. You speak the truth. You speak to your kids. Most depressing statistic I've ever seen is that the average child, by the time he turns 6 years old, will have spent more time watching television than he will spend talking to his father through the course of his entire human life. Heartbreaking. We have to speak. We have to talk to kids about the tough stuff, human sexuality. And it might not be easy. My friend just told his kids how babies are made. It didn't go over well. The kid was like, Dad, that's disgusting. He's like, Dad, how long have people been doing this? And I said, tell him the 1960s. And he said, Dad, is there any other way? And the dad's like, that's pretty much it, kid. And then the daughter came up to this little like 7-year-old girl and said, Daddy, I want to be like the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the dad said, that's wonderful. And she said, yes, Daddy, I want to get pregnant before I'm married. And the dad's like, no, that's not what we're going for, honey. But we got to speak. And yeah, like sometimes awkward. One girl told me, I guess she goes up to her dad and came with the dad and said, Daddy, I want to go to the Notre Dame football game on Saturday. And then dad's like, well, it's great, honey, but that's a home game. That's like 7 hours away from where we live here. And how are you going to get to the game? And she said, well, I want to go with my friend, and we want you to take us to the game. And the dad's like, dude, it's Saturday. I got so much stuff to do around the house. And she said, Daddy, she's my best friend, and her dad is your best friend. And we need a daddy-daughter football day. Because she said, Dad, before long, I'm going to be off to college, and these memories that we could have made will be all fine, And he calls up the other girl's dad. He's like, dude, what are we going to do with these 2 girls in a 7-hour car ride? Made a plan. Early Saturday morning, they started driving, and then they said to the girls, we have a 7-hour car ride with you today, so we thought we'd spend this time talking to girls about chastity and human sexuality. And the girl's like, nah, trying to jump out of the window. But he said, you know what my daughter said to me when we got home? Thanks, Dad, for having the guts to talk to us about what we're too embarrassed to talk to you about. Thank you for initiating this conversation. So a priest blesses, a prophet speaks, and a king is not one just who rules. The king is the one who leads by his example, because virtues are more easily caught than taught. Our kids will not always obey us, but I think they'll never fail to imitate us. That's why one girl, I remember she told me her dad came up to her mom. She said, I don't sleep with teenage boys because of my father. She said one day he came up behind my mom, gave her a big 2-fisted hug, looked over his shoulder at me and said, Maggie, all I want for you is one day you find a man who loves you as much as I love your mother. And for her, case closed. I don't need the philosophy, theology. I see what love is supposed to look like. And so that's how we exercise our kingship. How do we do this? We need fellowship. We got to stay on our groups, whether it's the Kingsmen. We need that brotherhood. We need accountability in the confessional. And look, I know it can be awkward at times, but don't just go to confession. Have a great confession. Some of you have already been for 20 times to confession, but you're still hanging on to something in that dark little corner of the soul. Well, that happened. I don't need to bring that up. That's too shameful. You're not supposed to carry the weight of that. Bring that to confession, be made new. And I know it could be awkward. And when I was in college, I remember coming back to my house off campus, and my roommate's sitting on the couch watching TV. I'm like, hey, Dario, you want to go to the gym with me? And he's like, no, I'm watching TV. I'm like, all right. Go upstairs, study for a while, come down. I'm like, I'm going to the gym. You sure you don't want to come? He's like, no, I'm watching TV. Go to the gym. I come back like an hour and a half later. Dude's still in front of the TV. And I'm like, dude, Dario, man, you're being like idle. You got to get up and do something. He's from Italy. Didn't understand the word idol. He's like, oh, like TV is my idol? And I'm like, no, like you're just sitting around too much. But he felt convicted of idolatry. So he goes to confession, okay? And he confesses the sin of idolatry to a priest who's like 85 years old and almost deaf. Now, the sin of idolatry sounds an awful lot like another sin, namely adultery, which is precisely what the priest thought he said. So he gets in there, hey, Father, forgive me, I'm guilty of adultery. He said, oh, it's very serious. Dario's like, not really. Oh, yes, this is serious. Dario's like, Father, it's just something to do. Oh, no, it's not just something to do. It's like, Father, come on, relax. Sometimes friends come over too. Ah! this like gigantic penance. People outside the confessional are moving down the hallway, but they never, I guess, resolved the miscommunication there. But you know what? Look, sometimes awkward, but it's so worth it. Go at least once a month as a family, because you know what? For your kids to see you in line for confession, they learn, ooh, even dad needs to tell his father he's sorry. And I know in my relationship with my wife, sometimes when we're butting heads and we feel there's that block between us, more often the block between us is actually a block between us and God. And when we remove that through the sacrament of reconciliation, it's so surprising how much more easily we can be reconciled with one another. And so go to him in confession. And then lastly, come to him in the most blessed sacrament. To be aware of how fully present he is. I was writing a book on St. John Paul II and got to interview many people who knew him well. And they told me that when he came to America in Baltimore in the late 1990s, the Vatican sends people ahead of him to get everything ready. The guy in charge of setting it all up is a priest named Father Roberto Tucci. Father Tucci comes to the bishop's residence in Baltimore, get everything ready. He's walking down the hallway, and he noticed that one of the doors opens to a chapel with the Blessed Sacrament. So he told the priest there, Father Michael White, Father, when the Holy Father comes, please just make sure this door to the chapel is closed. We don't want to let the Holy Father know the Blessed Sacrament is in residence here. And the priest was a little perplexed, like, dude, why are you hiding Jesus from the Pope there? And he said, look, we're in charge of the Holy Father's apostolic visits. Every minute of his day is scheduled. He has 8 minutes with the vice president, 6 minutes with the seminarians, 9 minutes with everything's scheduled. He said the problem we're having with John Paul is that whenever he finds the Blessed Sacrament, he insists on going make it a visit. He gets lost in contemplative prayer for 45 minutes, and it ruins the entire itinerary. And so he says, look, we actually reroute his Pope mobile away from Catholic churches, because if we drive by one, he's banging on the glass and wants to go see Jesus. So we just drive him down the block and we're on schedule. And so he says, look, when the Holy Father comes, just shut the door. He'll never know it's there, because the whole hallway is full of doors and they all look the same. So a couple weeks later, John Paul II arrives with his whole entourage. He's got Monsignor Jeevish, Father Tucci, Father Michael White, and they're walking down the hallway. And the Holy Father's walking, and he passes the door, and he keeps walking. Then he stops, turns around, looks at the door, looks over to Father Tucci, and shook his head and wagged his finger at him, opened up the door, and went right into Jesus. And Father Michael White was astonished. He said, look, there's no way he could have known. That door looks like all the other doors, but he said he sensed our Lord was in there. Kind of like that scene in the Passion of the Christ where Our Lady senses Jesus Christ down in a little dungeon there, the unity of hearts. And he said, look, if you think that was a coincidence, he said he did the same thing the next day at the seminary. He took a beeline straight to the Blessed Sacrament as if he always knew where it had been, because of that Eucharistic heart. And so go to the Blessed Sacrament. And to help you live out this lifestyle and your families and your vocations and vocations to sermons, the resources that we've got over there, check out Deacon Harold's, checking out Patrick's stuff, the stuff that we brought. I wrote a biography of St. John Paul II of all the stories that were not released by the Vatican until after he had died. All the different assassination attempts on him, how Al-Qaeda tried to kill him, the guys who bombed 9/11 tried to kill him during a World Youth Day, a priest even stabbed him in Fatima. Like, just a lot of the stuff that people aren't aware of, different miracles he did, we put in this. So good Lenten reading. Forged is a book that fathers can do with sons, men's groups can do together. It's a 33-day program on how to defend love from lust, break free from porn, lust, all that kind of stuff, and you get free videos every day with the book. So that's for the guys. And then there's free stuff as well, CDs on parenthood, on marriage, on fatherhood. All the CDs are free to take. They're also free to burn and duplicate. So feel free to take those. And then just the last couple books we've got over there. Best book I've ever read on fatherhood was by this guy named Devin Shad, and it's called Show Us the Father, 7 Secrets to be a Father on Earth Like a Father in Heaven. So it's a great book for the dads. And then for the single guys and girls, book for the girls, How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. If you've got a goddaughter, niece, a daughter who's anywhere between like 14 years old and 34 years old, I would get this for them. The first chapter is the top 10 guys to avoid, so it's kind of like a manual to avoid losers, and so write a personalized note from Godfather, from Uncle, from Dad to these girls, because they need that masculine voice reassuring them when they start to lose confidence in their standards. And then lastly, for the boys, we created this one where I surveyed more than 1,000 women of what they wanted guys to know when it came to dating etiquette. What women are thinking, but they don't feel like it's their place place to tell us. And so how to ask her out, how to know if she's the right one, all the dating etiquette stuff. So if you have a young boy, this just doesn't teach them that like dating is bad. It teaches them when to date, who to date, and how to date through the lens of Christianity. So those are the resources that we've got over there. But the best gift I have for you is this. I got lots of people praying for you. Last night I spoke to a couple hundred people. I asked them praying for you. This morning I took a picture from the back of the church while Deacon was speaking. I put that out on Twitter. That goes to 40,000 people. I asked them to be praying for you and for your families. And I would ask in return, please pray for mine and our ministry. And if after hearing today's talk, there's a lot I just dumped on you. A lot. And it might feel like, oh, Jason, I got a mess going on. My spirituality, my purity, my marriage, like it's a mess. I'll leave you this. There was a husband and a father who lived in China in the late 19th century. And this guy, 30-year-old dad, and a good husband, good father, and a doctor, he became sick with a stomach ailment. Since he was a doctor, he treated himself with a drug at the time used for these ailments of opium. Now, the illness was resolved, but a drug addiction remained in its place. And so this doctor, the father's name was Mark, went to the priest. Hey, Father, forgive me, I've been taking these drugs. And the priest gave him absolution, but then Mark fell back to the drug addiction. So Mark went back to confession. Hey, Father, forgive me, I just messed up again. And the priest gave him some more pastoral advice and absolution. And then Mark came back. I'm still addicted. And this went on to the point where the priest told Mark, look, the fact that you keep taking these drugs shows me that either you're not really sorry for your sins or whatever, I don't know. And so I would just ask you to no longer receive the sacrament of reconciliation until you've overcome this vice, and no longer receive Holy Communion, which is obviously bad pastoral advice to give, but the priest didn't know how to deal with addiction. And so Mark obeyed him. And for a month, he received no Holy Communion, although he went to Mass with his family. And then the month became a year, no sacraments. And then the year became 10 and 20 and 30 years. At this point, he's more than 60 years old, and he's still struggling with this on a daily basis. Still being a good husband, good father, but addicted to opium. And he just started praying to God that God would make him a martyr. God answered the prayer. In the year 1900, the Boxer Rebellion came into China, and Christians all over were rounded up to be executed. And he and 9 members of his family were brought to their place of torture and death. And one by one, they started cutting off the heads of the members of his family. And he begged the torturers to kill him last, because he didn't want anyone in the family to die without him by their side, encouraging them to be faithful to the very end. And one by one, they cut the heads off everybody in his family until only he was left. And he was beheaded as he was singing the litany of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And today, he is a canonized saint in the Catholic Church who died addicted to opium, which to me is proof that the saint is not the one who does not have a mess in their life. The saint is the one who gives their mess utterly to Jesus Christ. And so if your mess is your marriage, if your mess is your kids, if your mess is yourself, give the mess utterly to Jesus Christ, and he will complete the good work that he began in you. God bless you, and God bless your families. Thank you.